And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Copyright 2.0 show, episode number 330, into the big three threes. My name is Jonathan Bailey, and I am from the website Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com, plagiarismtoday.com. And joining me as usual, a man who is much better at picking his domains that are easy to spell, is Patrick O'Kee from the iFroggy Network at iFroggy.com and a bunch of awesome forums. And now, back into blogging again. Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing all right. Doing pretty good overall. It's a great day for me. It's a fine day for me, but not such a fine day for a lot of TweetDeck users, it seems.
Yeah, you don't use TweetDeck?
No, I don't use TweetDeck anymore. I stopped using TweetDeck about 2 months ago. I ended up changing the way I use Twitter and switched to Hootsuite for my actual tweeting out purposes, and then just read the timeline and my lists on Twitter itself. So
okay,
that's
I use TweetDeck.
Were you bit by the horrible soul-crushing bug that they're all hyped up about right now?
I was,
Oh.
and yeah, I don't know what the, I don't know if anything really bad will come of it. All that, I don't know. In my case, it was, and in a lot of people's cases, it's just a tweet that's being retweeted.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And that was on my stream. I knew something was wrong with TweetDeck because it displayed a dialog box. You know, the articles about this show a screen. I didn't get any kind of you've been hacked or any sort of message like that, but just mine was just it said XSS and Twitter. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I know what that is, or I at least have some concept of what an XSS vulnerability is, and so I didn't think too much of it until I saw some of the chatter and then looked into my profile, and I just had retweeted, I think, and pinned, I think is what it did. It pinned the tweet to the top of my page, just with some code in there. And I actually noticed someone retweet in TweetDeck, all it appeared was a heart. And I just saw an article that said this is something tied to an emoji. So I guess that's what it was. Someone retweeted a heart, and then I just made that connection to, oh, that's kind of funny. I was like, why was that person retweeting a heart? It just doesn't fit them. I don't know what they have no love in their life. No, they do. They have plenty, but it just seems kind of strange to me.
Well, it's interesting. YouTuber Tom Scott, his video right now, if you go to dig.com, it's actually on Dig, but he does a great explanation of what the quote-unquote vulnerability, it is a vulnerability, quote-unquote about it, what the vulnerability is. And basically what's going on is TweetDeck, the app, whether it's the Chrome app or the desktop app or whatever, basically is not filtering out code in tweets. So it's basically what you've got is a script command that someone tweets out. It's picked up by TweetDeck and it tells TweetDeck to find the retweet button, press it, and then hit OK on the dialogue afterward, and then it appends like a heart afterward.
Now, what I saw in articles suggest is that it was tied to the emoji usage, like something about an emoji made it so that the HTML or the code filtering was disabled. I don't know if that's true or not, because I don't think you just can't tweet code out. Like Twitter, I don't think it works that way. I mean, if it had been, we would have had this years ago. I mean, you can't really. I don't think so anyway. You can't just tweet it out. I mean, you can tweet code, but it won't execute, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The code won't execute. So I don't know if that's true or not. I just read a headline. I couldn't find the whole article here, but just it was that someone's saying that it was tied to the handling of emojis, which I think are a fairly recent thing with Twitter. The icons, the graphical images that you see within Twitter sometimes. Yeah. I've never used one because I'm not real sure.
You're not the one that cooled.
Yeah.
Kids, Patrick. That's the reason, you know.
Yeah, but that might not be correct. That might not be correct.
With it.
Whatever it is, hopefully it's just someone. Hopefully it is, I guess. Yeah. Gray hat, white hat, however you want to term it. Just someone who's demonstrating it and not doing anything malicious with it. If anything can be done malicious with it.
Well, it doesn't look like anything malicious can be done with it because it can only manipulate things on the Twitter page itself. So it can't like access your password from what I'm seeing,
right,
or anything like that. There's no indication of anything like that. It's just basically for you, on your behalf, if you will, clicking the retweet button, clicking OK on the dialog box, and in some cases, as you said, pinning it to the top of your profile.
Yeah.
And that's all it's doing. It can only manipulate those variables on the page itself. Now, TweetDeck says they have fixed the problem, but there are still reports of people seeing this, so it may require. I know that I got an alert today that my TweetDeck app on my Mac automatically updated today. I didn't have it open, but the Mac said, "We have updated TweetDeck automatically. You're welcome." You know.
Yeah. I don't know if mine's updated or not. I got to check the version number. I logged out and closed it.
Good move.
And then I revoked access on Twitter.com just to be safe. But I haven't logged back in yet, so I'm not sure if there's a specific version number. I see a version number on the page here when I open TweetDeck, but I don't know if that's try to log back in.
Yeah, so a pretty nasty bug, but it doesn't appear to be dangerous. It's not like it's getting your personal information, just more of a practical joke of sorts, I guess you would say.
Yeah, it's just reading your DMs.
Yeah, just reading your DMs. All of them. Well, they're going to be very bored if they're reading mine. I'll just warn them now. They're wasting their time going through my DMs because nobody DMs me. Nobody. It's like I never get a DM on Twitter. I get all these @ replies. I get all that, but no one direct messages me. No one loves me. I feel hurt by this.
Yeah.
Sorry
about that.
That's all right. I'm fine.
I don't do. I do DMs sometimes. You know, some people don't read them all that much. I know, and you know, some people might have. You know, not a lot of people I follow, but some people have so many. They just follow tons of people, or they use a script and they follow 50,000 people, so they really don't use their DMs all that much. But yeah, I still prefer the good old email for the most part, or IM.
Yeah, that's the way I am, and I've got to say it's kind of annoying. The most common use of DM I see is I follow someone like, hey, this guy's in copyright. He followed me. I should follow him back. This is relevant. He's got interesting things in his feed, you know. Follow them back, and I get the thanks for following direct message, and that's like, okay, you're just unfollowed now, you know. So,
yeah, which honestly, I never thought that was that bad of a practice, but it just got ruined. Saying thank you for following me, but it just got ruined in noise and in automation, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. That's the real problem: is the automation of it and the sheer noise factor of it. It happens so many times.
You just can't do it anymore.
Yeah,
you can't
exactly.
say it. Instead, if there's someone, you can't say thank you. But I think if there's something, I mean, you want to have a conversation. So you could say, I'm glad that we connected on here. I listened to your show, the Chiropractic Put Show, a lot. Thanks. That's a little more different. Yeah.
I would deal with that, but the generic automated. Thanks for following. My site is here. You can read more here. Follow me on Facebook here. That just no. Nope. Don't do it. Please don't do that.
Yeah, no.
So yeah, I'm glad. I'm sorry you were bit by it, but I'm glad it appears all is well and you took good security precautions afterward.
Yeah, it's just a part of living on the internet. To me, it's not that big a deal. Stuff happens.
It does, and no one's completely secure. Just some people are more secure than others. That's all there is to it. And unfortunately, this isn't really anything you or anyone else who uses TweetDeck could have done, because this was a problem deep within the bowels of TweetDeck itself as an application. How are you gonna do? You know?
Yeah. I guess never use TweetDeck again.
Never, ever.
Yeah, because this sort of thing can happen to anyone. Like, I think Hootsuite. Some people use Hootsuite, and I've seen people say, "Oh, I use Hootsuite. That's good." Well, don't be too. I'm
not being cocky. I don't actually leave.
Cocky. No, you aren't. But don't think it can't happen to you, Hootsuite users.
Well, I've got to say, Hootsuite does do one thing that might help reduce the impact of something like that, and that is it goes to sleep after a few minutes. If you don't actively use it, it will go to sleep and stop loading tweets, so it won't run overnight.
Right.
Might help a little bit in these cases, but yeah, I mean, don't get too cocky no matter what. Even if you use the Twitter website, don't get too cocky.
Yeah.
In fact, if you use any website on the internet for any purpose whatsoever, don't get cocky.
If you breathe, don't get cocky.
Exactly. But yeah, so that sucked, but like I said, it doesn't appear to be too bad. Real fast, a programming note. We will be off next week. I will be in jolly old England. I'll be in the Newcastle area attending the 6th International Integrity and Plagiarism Conference at Northumbria University. It's a good time. I'm looking forward to seeing some old friends there. It'll be my third time in attendance at this event. Had to actually think about it for a second. Couldn't remember if it was 3 or 4. It'd be my third time in attendance. Really excited about going and seeing how it works out. So it's going to be a nice time had by all, I hope. There. So yeah, touch base with you guys after. Try to keep the copyright news to a minimum while I'm gone, please.
Okay.
Anything going on your side? Anything going on with you?
No. I mean, just normal kind of stuff. So dive right in.
Still working hard and doing your thing.
Yep.
So yeah, it seems to be a pretty ho-hum week overall, other than of course TweetDeck, exploding.
Right. Well, I mean, there's always something going on, but I mean,
there's always something going on.
No impact on me, so.
Yeah, no real impact on me.
Oh, whoop-de-doo. Okay, good.
All right. Well, anyways, so do you want to just jump on into copyright news and get started on that? All right. Well, let's get started then. Big news this week. Big news, everyone. This week comes from the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in the Hathitrust case. Now, when we've been talking about book scanning, Google Book Search has taken nearly all of the limelight. It's Google Book Search, it's a consumer-facing product, it's a huge company name, everyone knows who they are, so therefore, they got a lot of attention in the press. But the reality is, the one that was sort of first in the line, if you will, involved Hathitrust, and they are a nonprofit organization. It's basically, my understanding, is a group of universities got together to scan millions of books. This might sound familiar to some people involved in the Google Book Search case, for the purpose of indexing them and making them searchable in a database. Now, the idea was for them, they would use this database in libraries to help students and other library patrons search for the books they wanted on the specific pages they needed it on, etc., not necessarily a public search engine. However, they were still doing the same type of scanning and textualizing and indexing. Well, the Authors Guild, you might also recognize them from the Google Book Search case, sued them over it, and the case made it to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which has now ruled unanimously in the 3-judge panel in favor of Hathitrust, saying that the scanning, indexing is a fair use of the books, noting that it is not a replacement for the books. It may actually help locate and make these books available, and does not seem to be replacing the actual function of the book in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, this does not bode well for the Google Book Search case, which is actually on its way into, it's actually been heard in the same court already, and we're waiting for the Second Circuit to issue a ruling on it. So yeah, a pretty big story here, and pretty interesting to watch the fallout from it.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much of a problem with this. I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't bode well for the Authors Guild.
No,
but
not.
I don't know. I don't know how well I thought this was going to work out for them anyway at this stage of the game. It's been going on for so long, and they had a shot at a settlement a while ago, and as we've talked about, they got a little too greedy. Maybe that's just my opinion, and so that fell apart. And it went back to the drawing board, and yeah, I don't. Some of these things, some of the fights here are things that maybe I don't know. Like you talk about, there's multiple layers to this. One is the database, another is the ability to access content, the ability to access content by disabled users, and converting works to alternate forms, and that's an important thing as well. And I don't know. I don't know. The Authors Guild, they're just sometimes cutting off, the nose to spite their face sort of thing going on here with some of these cases.
To me, this one kind of closely mirrors the Perfect 10 v. Google case in a lot of ways. That one dealt with Google image search, specifically image thumbnails. Perfect 10 we'll actually be talking about later on in an unrelated case. But Perfect 10 is, of course, a pornography company. They sued Google. I don't know why I said of course, like everyone knows who Perfect 10 is. But they sued Google, alleging that Google image search, which had the little thumbnails of images, and sometimes those images were of Perfect 10 photographs, Perfect 10 owned photographs. So they sued Google, alleging that Google image search was an infringement, and the appeals court there ruled that Google, taking these images, scanning them, making thumbnails of them, and then displaying them for search purposes was a fair use. This antitrust ruling seems very much in line with that. This idea that taking works and making a database of them is not necessarily an infringement, so long as you do it in a way that doesn't replace the original content, and doesn't actually replicate the function of it. And it's interesting that in the antitrust case, the database doesn't actually display any of the text. It only displays page numbers. Basically, all that text, all those words are in behind closed doors. You don't actually see them. You search in the antitrust database, unless there's permission from the authors, of course, you don't see the words. You just see, oh, those words were found, this book, this page number, and I'm sure there's like the Dewey Decimal System number or something, you know what I mean, to help you find it. And that's all you get.
Yeah.
So
I honestly didn't realize that, and just kind of thought it was something along the lines of Amazon Search Inside. But that even makes me feel even more so that it's not an issue.
Yeah.
As an author, it's not an issue for me. I think that there's this balance of people discovering books and helping them to discover books. And so, if people can't find that if people can't find that the information is in your book, then do you think they'll find your book another way? Maybe, maybe not though. And so, I think when you look at a case like this, when you're dealing with libraries, you either want your books in libraries or you don't. Libraries buy books. I've had a number of libraries buy my book, and of course, libraries participate in digital licensing schemes. And so, I'm sure I've had some digital rights passed through libraries and ebook licensing and all that stuff. And that's just kind of an evolution of the library, I think. I went to the library as a kid, and as most people did, and most people have to in school. And so, you go and you find information. You'd ask a librarian. You go to the cart system. But that was really limited, right? I mean, you're based on the library's brain, which might be massive, but still is going to compete with a computer. And then you're limited to sections and looking. Oh, here's the sports section. Okay, here's baseball books. But if you want to talk about a specific player or a specific moment or a specific time, or you're doing a report on a specific event, then this is just helping people find the information faster and get to your book faster. And I think the same is true in retail to some extent with Amazon Search Inside. I think in some cases maybe people just read a page and don't buy the book, but I think overall more people buy the book because of access to some of the information in the book and the fact that they can search and it shows up in the Amazon website when they search for terms, or when you go to Google Book Search and you search and you find information. I've bought books, and not just 2 or 3, based on text content being in the book and me being able to find it through one of those 2 means. So, again, I don't know what's the game here financially for them, right? I mean, a licensing scheme to database and archive the information. I mean, where's the upswing to the profitability? I think if trying to squeeze the libraries for more in this case, no, wasn't a good play, and I think this bears that out.
Well, I know with the Google book search case, one of the things that was constantly harped upon was that Google was building it for their own commercial purposes, their own profit. They were trying to profit off the author's content,
right?
By making this database of their materials. That's a little less true here.
Yeah, it is true. Less true. It's less true. And even looking at Google, I mean, the thing about Google is that, yes, they're big and intimidating, but that means that if they do something really wrong, that's clearly wrong, there's also a bigger honeypot to go after.
Yeah.
So Google has something to lose by doing something that's overtly illegal or overly promiscuous as far as content is concerned. That's a good application of that word.
Yeah, that works. We'll learn with that one instead. But yeah, they do have more to lose. And in this case here, of course, we're dealing with a non-profit organization. It's like I said, a conglomerate of universities that came together to do this. So a lot of the arguments are different,
right,
but at the same time, a lot of the arguments are very much the same. And it clearly, the court did not seem to think that this idea of scanning books and making this database and making it searchable was not likely an infringement. And I don't think adding the commercial element of Google Book Search is going to really change that.
And I think the Authors Guild has to bring some sort of value to these relationships, right? Mm-hmm. When you think about, okay, so what are we going to do with this content, right? Okay, I heard you said they're concerned about they use it for their own commercial gain. And there's other ways that could be done beyond just selling the books. Of course, Google would be insane to sell books without securing the rights. They would never do it. But let's say that someone wants a database of books to be searchable. Okay. How can they get one? Answer: they can, because the Authors Guild doesn't bring anything to the table on this. They don't. They haven't. There's no database they represent. There is no company they represent. There is no group of publishers that have collectively indexed their works to even license in this manner. So the companies have to build their own database, and that's why this Haythie Trust built their own database, and that's why Google Books did it, because it doesn't exist. So if that was ever going to be a business, it should have already been on top of it. Go ahead.
And that's one of the questions that people ask is, well, what's Haythie Trust bringing to this? Well, what they're bringing is the fact they scanned, indexed, and made this searchable.
Yeah, this doesn't.
Previously, it was just words on page. It did just.
Sorry, we're going to a little late.
Yeah.
We're going to late. It just that takes a little more than 5 minutes. It doesn't just take it's not like copying a few books with the scanner. It's it takes a long time to index the world of popular books, let's say.
Yeah, they definitely use some resources to do this, as did Google. So, yeah, they're obviously putting work into this, and I think it's unfair to malign them hopelessly. And honestly, I'm kind of like you. Even though I want to really like the Authors Guild in this case, I want to think of them as the good guys here. I'm really not seeing what the long game here is. You want your books to be harder to find?
Right. It is counterproductive.
I don't see the long game.
Yeah, it's counterproductive. I think
it is, and I'm hoping that now that we've got this appellate court.
I'm sorry, I'm not speaking over you intentionally.
No, we got a little bit more lag than usual in our Google.
A lot more lag, it seems like, than usual.
Anyway, yeah. But I mean, the thing for me is I don't see what the long game here is. I don't see what they're trying to get at. And I'm hoping that now that this appellate court ruling is in, maybe we can kind of, get some cooperative efforts going on, because I think that's where everyone can win.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just wait. I didn't want to start talking again and get delayed. So
that's all right. No, so yeah, we'll just jump into the next story then. What I'm doing now is I'm waiting because I don't want to talk over you. Yeah, this is going to be a great podcast. Let's watch Jonathan and Patrick deal with the lag for an hour.
You should have seen us trying to count to 10 before the show.
Yeah, I know.
We couldn't do it.
Embarrassing, because we do we count down from 10 before every podcast. That way so I can sync the audio up when I edit it. And of course I'm like 10, and then like 4 seconds later Patrick's like 9, and I'm like, whoa. Either Patrick completely fell asleep at the wheel, or we have lag. So yeah,
we have a fair amount of lag going on.
There's little gaps of silence. You now know what's going on.
Here, let's just demonstrate this, Jonathan. Okay, I'll say a number, and then as soon as you hear it, you say the number. All right. Okay. Here we go. 457.
457.
Yeah, that was a little bit.
Wasn't too bad though.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought, but I think in conversation it's getting worse.
Well, the problem is
experiencing ups and downs.
It's not consistent. It keeps coming in and out.
Exactly. It's not consistent. Yeah. We're getting ups and downs here. That time wasn't bad, but in a second it'll be like, a few second delay. Anyway, so let's talk about the next story.
Freaking lag. You got me killed in Call of Duty, and it's messing up my podcast. So the next story deals with the European Court of Justice, which ruled after a 5-year case that browsing the internet is indeed legal. Or so that's what the headlines will tell you. Long story short here, there was a ruling. This dealt with a very unusual long-term battle between the PRCA, the Public Relations Industry Organization in the United Kingdom, the Newspaper License Agency, the NLA, and actually it's our old friend Meltwater. And one of the things that they accused Meltwater of was infringing their copyright, storing cache copies of stories and art and, I guess, press releases that they had written. Well, this case actually made it all the way to the European Court of Justice, which ruled that temporary copying done for the purpose of while surfing the internet does not actually infringe copyright. It's a fair use, basically, and it's A-OK. You're allowed to make caches within your browser, which is good because your browser is almost certainly making a cache of everything you visit, at least a very temporary one. But, I mean,
right.
This is just kind of mind-blowing that this was even necessary.
Yeah.
I feel silly talking about it, other than the fact it was a European Court of Justice ruling in involved meltwater. I mean, and the further thing I would say that by posting something on the internet, and if you know anything about how the internet works, I think it could be assumed that a temporary cache is kind of a natural consequence of visiting it, so that I would argue an implied license, if nothing else, but that's just me.
Right. And does this speak at all to the idea that, you know, I guess, does this have relevancy to, I don't know how to term this, but, you know, the difference between hosting content and viewing content, right? The difference between hosting it and downloading it. Hosting a song versus downloading a song, right? I mean, even though cache is more or less an essential part of how the internet works for most people, by default, without any intervention on their own, you know, when they boot a browser, when they launch their new computer, by default, they're going to cache content in their web browser. Most people, a lot of people, you know, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people, a substantial portion of the population, won't even know where to go to change that. They won't even look in the settings. They don't care. They don't understand it. But, I mean, is there any relevancy in this to that general construct of hosting versus downloading and who's responsible?
Yeah, well, I mean, this makes specific point. In fact, it comes from the temporary copying exemption under the law, which I think that word temporary is what's so important, because it means that it's A, short-lived, and B, automatically removed. So that would be very bad for hosting content if it were A, short-lived, and B, automatically removed.
And it's interesting you mention that, because it made me think of SoundCloud and the SoundCloud app on my Kindle Fire HDX, because I realized a while back when I plugged my Kindle Fire into my computer and I explored the files that are on the device, that it actually downloads the MP3 file, or at least an audio file that I can just easily play onto my device. It's there, and so that's because I can listen to it offline. But it's theoretically temporary, right? I mean, I guess it's a cache of the song, and it's how the SoundCloud app works. But I was like, huh, that's interesting. Not really any effort to hide it or give it to some weird proprietary file name that only works for this app or something tricky like that, but it's just a straight audio file that I could easily drag onto my computer and listen to.
Yeah. Spotify does something similar, but it's stored in a weird format I think only Spotify can access.
Right, that was the weird part for me, was that it was just like a straight-up audio file. I think it might have been MP3. It was like MP3 or Wave, one of those, yeah.
Wow. That is interesting. I had no idea. I'll have to try the SoundCloud app on the iPhone sometime and see if it does the exact same thing. I have no idea. The interesting part to me isn't that it caches things on your Kindle Fire, it's that it caches it in a format that basically you can access from anything.
Yeah.
Drag it straight to iTunes.
I might plug it in while we're talking here and see get the file format.
Okay. That's fine. Take your time. We'll come back to it if needed. But yeah, I mean, to me, this ruling is straightforward. I don't see why it was terribly necessary. But here we are, and we got the analysis. You know, it's fascinating to see this case continuing on, even to this extent. Well, we talked previously about the AP Meltwater lawsuit in the United States being settled. They've made their peace. They're working together on new projects. They're buddy-buddy in the United States now. I mean, news agencies and Meltwater here. But apparently in the UK, it's still an ongoing battle. So multiple fronts for Meltwater, it seems. And of course, there are other issues in the Meltwater case that were not decided by the European Court of Justice. So this case is it's over for internet users worried about their caching of content being illegal, but not for Meltwater. Yay. Not really sure how to feel about that. But we'll move forward while Patrick plugs that in, and like I said, we'll come back to it at a later moment if he's able to figure it out. Talk now about Representative Jerry Nadler, a Democrat from New York. He is getting ready to propose a new music licensing bill that he hopes will be sort of the all-in-one total reform package for music licensing. And it's interesting because he said publicly that he supports legislation that's previously been submitted, including a Songwriter Equity Act, which would music licensing agencies to seek higher royalties from songwriters and music publishers. And you might recognize one of the names, one of the signatories on that one of the people that that sponsored that one. Patrick, that was Hakeem Jeffries.
Sorry, yeah, yep, I remember. I recognize that name.
Yeah, you should. We met him at South by. He was a cool dude. And then another one by Representative George Holding and John Conyers that would require digital, cable, satellite radio, and others to pay musicians for the play of songs recorded before 1972, going back to that pre-1972 sound recording issue that's still ongoing. So those two bills are apparently a part of what Naylor's doing, plus more. He's wanting to really get down and reform music licensing for radio, digital streaming services, etc. in the United States. He said he's going to try to push it out next week, so we will see if he gets any co-sponsors and what he actually puts in print.
I guess we have to just wait and see.
It's fascinating because there seems to be a lot of momentum here on music licensing reform. You know, unlike other areas of copyright reform where there's been a lot of hesitancy to take it on. And in fact, it says here that Chairman of the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Intellectual Property, Bob Goodlatte, said that he will not make any decisions about specific legislation until after the current review is done. They're doing the big review on copyright law. Well, they've got a long way to go on that. They're doing another one, I think, in June or later this month, or there's more in July. It's going to be pretty much all year. At least that process is going on. But in the meantime, there's apparently a big push by several representatives and senators to try and get music licensing sort of become a now issue before this analysis is complete. So.
Yeah, I like the way it sounds from what he said.
The way our legislation works.
Yeah, I like the way it sounds from what he said. I think it is good, as we talked about in the past, to kind of come up with something that works a little bit more seamlessly and is a little more approachable to the average person or average business owner, where you can more easily license songs and, yeah, something web-based, something that works for all parties. Easier said than done, of course, but the article mentions a patchwork legal system, which is how it feels from an outward perspective, reading about it and talking about it here on the show. And in the internet age, in the age of, people can get things anywhere. If you don't offer it legally, they can download it from the internet illegally. It definitely needs to be easier than it once was, and hopefully this can help push it in the right direction.
Well, and that's one of the things. Right now, the current license system, it seems like no one likes it. Musicians and songwriters complain they don't get paid enough and they don't get paid quickly enough. People who are trying to license music say it's too complicated and too expensive, and the middlemen say that they're too overburdened by government regulations. So nobody's happy.
Right. So and usually that would be the sign of something good, but unfortunately.
Well, the problem is everybody's not a little bit unhappy. Everybody is extremely unhappy. Is the real problem. If everyone's a little bit unhappy, it's good. If everyone's extremely unhappy, you've clearly done something wrong. You know, there's a difference. Well, shifting gears now to the Beastie Boys and their lawsuit against Monster Beverage or Monster Energy Drink, depending on what you want to do, which approach you want to say. They have a ruling, and they have been awarded by a jury $1.7 million in the case. Now, the case centers around a 2012 snowboarding contest, which Monster Energy Drink was the sponsor of. They created a promotional video for it, and in that they used remixes of 3 separate Beastie Boys songs. So, long and short of it is, they used these remixes, and it turns out they didn't actually have the rights to, use these songs. Not good, you know what I mean? Not the way you wanted to handle it. So, long and short of it is, Monster admitted that they didn't have the rights to it. They just admitted it, said, we screwed up, we're sorry, but hey, we are innocent infringers here. We believe we owe something in the neighborhood of $125,000. And Beastie Boys were asking for $2 million in copyright infringement plus $500,000 in other elements. And the jury came back and awarded them 1.7. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I believe 1.7 is closer to 2.5 than it is $125,000. So I think we know who the jury took greater sympathy with in this case.
Yeah, I think
Just saying.
we do. And yeah, I mean, it's good that Monster kind of owned up to it. I think that as we just talked about the idea of Google being careful enough to make sure they license books before they sell them, I think it's true for a lot of large companies. And yet you get a circumstance from who knows who put this video together, how high they were up, and they were working with it. The DJ was at the party, so maybe they just thought, okay, let's add some of their mixes into this. And, you know, there is obviously a DJ culture that a lot of brands try to embrace, and a lot of brands work with DJs these days. I mean, I've seen things like sponsored mixtapes, for example. And it's tough because you would hope that they, I mean, you would like them to make sure they have permission for all the songs on the mixtape, and yet I bet in some cases they don't, and they might have opened themselves up to liability like this.
Yeah.
So I think that might have been somewhere along the lines of what happened, but you have to be more careful. That said, it is good they came out and said that, you know, they didn't really have a defense, and you know, $100-something-thousand is not $5. It's not a small amount of money. Just in this case, they ended up losing, more or less losing. Obviously, the numbers in the middle, but more toward the Beastie Boys side of the spectrum. And the Beastie Boys have always been pretty vocal about not wanting their music played in ads. And so that's they did that here, more or less. It's an ad, I think, and so that's maybe part of the reason. If that was something that was talked about in court, I'm sure it was, that Beastie Boys don't want their music in ads, and this brand went ahead and did it. So I think there's an element to that as well.
Yeah, and it's made a little bit worse because the snowboarding contest took place. It began one day after Adam Yauch died. He was MCA.
Right.
From the Beastie Boys, and he in his will expressed the continuing wish for his music never to be used in commercials.
Yeah, so that's there's a way to spin that in court.
So just to drive the point home, it was already the case.
Yeah, there's a way to spin that in court. Is like, they couldn't wait one day after he died to take advantage of his work. Those ravenous fiends at Monster, so high on their own drink.
Those
so
monsters at Monster.
Yeah. Those monsters and monsters. So, yeah, there's definitely a way to spin that. But at the end of the day, they did something wrong, and they have to pay for it here.
Yeah. Well, before we leave this case behind, I was reading some forum postings. I actually ran across something on Reddit here. User T. Macius, I think is how you say his name, posted this. It's actually a quote, though, from an earlier judgment in this case, something the judge had penned. And, you know, I just want to show that even in a simple copyright case like this, which technically dealt with willful versus unwillful infringement, and seemed to be as straightforward as you could get, even in these cases, you can get some interesting legal precedent. And I'm just going to read this. This is a few short paragraphs from a judge's ruling. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
In proper context, the word dope, D-O-P-E, could certainly be taken as an expression, albeit unorthodox, of approval and acceptance of another's antecedent offer. But here, Z-Trip's exclamation dope was in response to Philip's query, please have a look at this video from the past weekend and let me know if you approve. Viewed in this context, Z-Trip's response of dope plainly communicated that, in some sense, he approved of the video. But such approval is quite distinct from conveying an assent of mutual exchange of promises or other consideration. And it certainly did not convey that Z-Trip had the authority to approve, on behalf of the Beastie Boys, a free license to Monster to use the Beastie Boys recordings and songs. There is no fair reading of the facts under which Z-Trip, by exclaiming dope, accepted such a contractual offer. Z-Trip's locution, though memorable, was certainly too enigmatic and elliptical to constitute a clear and unambiguous acceptance necessary for contract formation.
Yeah.
There you go. 3 paragraphs about signing contract with the word dope.
Yeah, and
there you go, Internet.
In the Internet, entertainment especially, you get caught up in sort of the idea of conversation and versus contracts, because there's a lot of times where people will say, okay, let's do that, or okay, you have the right to do that, and you know, you run into this as let's say a blogger, and you work with the promotion department at a label, and you say, can I use this song? And then they say, oh yeah, you can. And in that case, it's more crystal clear to say that you should be able to, and yet there's other elements at work sometimes, and the promotional people aren't always aware of what's going on at the larger brand or larger company legally, as weird as that may sound. So you get someone who's working on the video, and it's unclear
Yeah.
who sent that email that received a dope response in this case. But it's on the burden falls on Monster in this case to protect themselves, and that protection could mean signing a contract with Z-Trip where he pledges that he has the right, and then he takes and he indemnifies them from liability. But they didn't do that here, and they didn't seek approval from the Beastie Boys, and just didn't do the due diligence. On something that is for a major brand. And when that happens, then major brands are vulnerable because they have money, and people who are wronged by major brand will definitely go after them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's pretty much what happened here. They didn't do their due diligence. And if this is where they say they felt they got the permission, that's pretty lame, guys. Just
yeah,
honest.
That's terrible. That's very lame.
It's three paragraphs of some of the most amusing legal ruling I've seen in some time, though. So we did get that from it.
Yeah, and 1.7 million. It's I don't know anything about the snowboarding event, but it's not unreasonable to believe that Monster Value could have got $1.7 million from value in the event. So they might have broke a profit on this one. Who knows? Food for thought.
Yeah, technically. It definitely would be interesting to find out how much advertising and marketing they got, and also how much the event cost.
Yeah.
Because it could just be 1.7 million was a drop in the bucket for this event, I mean, I don't know how much it costs to put on a snowboarding event, okay? I have no idea. I've never hosted
Jonathan only does the snowboarding. He doesn't host the event.
Exactly. I'm only a radical snowboarder. I don't get to host the events. I just show up and win. Okay, and by win I mean the faceplant contest, because that would be me on a snowboard, eating all the snow between here and the bottom of the mountain. But shifting gears, now that I completely admitted to knowing nothing about snowboarding, shifting gears to talking about Perfect 10. We had the little foreshadowing earlier. Now we're here. Perfect 10 has reached a settlement with hosting company LeaseWeb. Perfect 10 sued LeaseWeb, saying that LeaseWeb was knowingly supporting pirate sites and was ignoring DMCA takedown notices and other requests for content to be removed. And long and short of it is they sued, claiming that, like I said, LeaseWeb was being willfully blind and supporting copyright infringement. LeaseWeb hit back, saying that some of, or many of, Perfect 10's DMCA notices did not comply with the law, and that they had no knowledge or understanding about this massive piracy taking place on their servers. Therefore, they're not responsible. The two sides traded barbs, but now they've settled it, and the terms of the settlement cannot be disclosed. So there you go.
Were there any copies of the DMCA notices made available?
They probably were in the court filings. I do not have them in front of me, though.
I'm just curious.
I'm curious.
Because they say they didn't meet the legal burden, so what were they short of? Were they short of?
I gotta say this. I gotta say this. Perfect 10 has a history of filing DMCA notices that kind of stretch what is acceptable under the law. They like to file DMCA notices that say, please remove all of this image on your servers, things like that. They have a history of that. I'm not saying they did that in this case, but in other cases they've done similar things.
You mean like sending a copy of the image along and saying, if you have this image on your server, please remove it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. They actually did something similar to Google once.
I mean, are we that far? Is it reasonable to think that one day I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying I want this because I don't think I do, but the idea of fingerprinting technology and image recognition software, that someone might be able to send an image and have a host scan all their servers. Is that a future that might exist?
It's not a future. It's technically a now.
Right. But do any a web host? I guess because I want to separate like YouTube from LeaseWeb that hosts videos on their servers for individual customers. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you. And I don't know, but we could be getting to that point. One never knows, it seems. I mean, it's crazy how fast technology is moving in this area of content identification, and that could be a part of the future. So it could actually happen.
It's relevant to talk over you again, I'm sure. It's relevant to Dropbox, I think, and the recent thing. I think it was Dropbox that came out with them where when people make a file public, you scan it against reported files or whatever the database is, and so they can find an infringing, let's say, Eminem song that someone uploads to the Dropbox and then shares publicly. If they don't share it publicly, it doesn't get scanned. But the moment you share it publicly and someone can access it without logging in the Dropbox, or someone else can access it besides you, then it gets scanned as part of a central database. So I guess that's sort of a middle road step there between the web hosts and, say, the YouTube-ish service providers.
Yeah, it makes sense, and that's something when Dropbox implemented that, a lot of people got upset. Oh, they're scanning my private files, or scanning this, or scanning that. I'm like, no, they're scanning the files you just made public. There's no privacy violation. You can't claim it's a private file when you just shared it publicly.
Right.
This isn't your photos of grandma getting scanned here. It's whatever unless you share your photos of grandma publicly, which then it would be, but it's only what you share publicly. But yeah, that'd be a middle of the road, and that might be something to consider in the future. But yeah, is the technology there? On hosts like LeaseWeb, I don't know. But I mean, on a personal note, having sent DMCA notices to LeaseWeb, they definitely are not always the most cooperative and responsive. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe this causes them to change their ways a little bit. I don't root for Perfect 10 a lot because they tend to have pretty zany theories, and like I said, they file DMCA notices, sometimes stretch the boundaries of what a DMCA notice is meant to be, in my opinion. But I'm definitely hoping. I would definitely like to see a more cooperative LeaseWeb.
Yeah.
So, just my 2 cents on that one. But yeah, so case is settled. No idea what was said about it, or why it was settled, what the terms of the settlement were. I guess we'll find out never, pretty much. Well, turning our attention to the iOS App Store, I shouldn't say iOS, I'm sure it's also the Mac App Store too, Apple has taken to removing applications that specialize in music downloading. These apps, they go by a lot of names. According to this photograph, some of them are like Free Music Downloader, or iDownload Lite, or Download Lite, or stuff like that. And what these apps do is it makes it so that you can download the music from a YouTube video, a SoundCloud embed, or hey, since SoundCloud's putting it all in MP3 format, they're making it super easy. There you go.
Yeah, and this seems like a good time to come back around to that, because I plugged my device in, and you know what? I think they updated, because I'm going to tell you, it was there. It was there. It was absolutely there. I opened the file. It was MP3 or some audio file. Windows Media Player played it. It was there. Okay. But now it is more like chunk files, like files that are kind of split up and in a format that the app can read. Maybe you can do something with it if you know what to do with it, but otherwise it's definitely been made difficult. So it's changed now, but it used to be like that. I'm almost certain I saw it. I know I did, but it was a while ago. So they probably updated, because when I did see it, I was like, that's weird. Maybe this app is relatively new to the Kindle Fire App Store, and they're just kind of getting it out there, and maybe they'll adjust it down the road. And I guess maybe they did. I don't know, but it was there. I'm telling you, it was there, but it's not anymore.
I believe you, Patrick. I believe you without any doubt or concern. And I'm on the SoundCloud app page in the Google Play Store, trying to see when it was updated. It was last updated today, June 11th.
Yeah, it gets updated. I've had updates to the Kindle Fire, and the Kindle Fire usually doesn't get updates as soon as the Android store does, although sometimes it does, just because they have to release a separate version. But or the Google Play Store, I should say, not the Android store. But yeah, I've had numerous updates. So probably one of those updates, they just kind of trimmed it out. Reading the story, though, getting back to the story, I think of apps like that, and it does mention developers have been asked to remove the audio downloading functionality of their app, and that could potentially include SoundCloud, which is a platform that I would say has some piracy, but overall seems to be a fairly creative community of people who own the music, or at the very least they're remixing it and releasing it. Like, there's just not as much, for whatever reason, of like the song itself, the main song you'd find on Amazon, uploaded onto SoundCloud. It just doesn't bubble up to the top.
And then I think SoundCloud takes steps. They have like their own version of Content ID and so forth to filter out infringing material too.
Yeah,
and YouTube's the same way.
I mean,
YouTube does much the same thing now too. They have licenses for some songs and a lot of music, and for others they just have Content ID to remove. But yeah, those apps that we were talking about are gone. They're all gone. In fact, there's an interesting before and after screenshot in this article on Mac Rumors where it's like, before you see dozens of apps in there, and then afterwards it's like, have you considered trying iTunes Radio? Because that's what it is. It's now an ad for iTunes Radio. If you search for music download in the App Store on iPhone or iPad or whatever. And so yeah. Basically, if you search for that, all those apps are gone, and the developers are being told they need to remove the music download function, which is bad because a lot of these apps, that's the only function. So
yeah, and I just wonder how this impacts apps that are tied to artists directly to download music, and if that's just not something that's going to be possible anymore, or is it going to be a universal rule for all apps? Like, how does it work, right? That'll be interesting to see because there are a lot of artists, and a lot of artists do it via SoundCloud, and they're not small artists, big artists.
Yeah.
Release songs for free download on SoundCloud or through another app or through a dedicated app or through their own app. So I'm kind of interested to see how that evolves because Apple certainly puts a stranglehold on their marketplace, right? Yeah. And that's sort of the Android versus Apple difference. Apple, you get a more secure marketplace. Android, you get more options. So I think they both have their pluses and minuses, and Apple certainly has done a good job protecting their own bottom line, let's say, with their App Store and by taking a cut of sales generated through the apps, which is why some people don't play ball with the Apple App Store. They make you buy through their website, or they link you to their website. I think Amazon does that, if I'm not mistaken. Amazon sells things through their website. So I don't know. I understand what Apple's doing, but I also think it's going to be interesting for artists who do make their work available for download for free because they're after something else with fans.
Yeah. And, well, I mean, I think this only applies to apps that download from third-party sites like YouTube or whatnot. It doesn't apply from, hey, download my music from my site.
Got it.
It only deals with third-party apps, and that's what all these have in common is that you're downloading from whatever service they're tied to. Whether it's like I said, YouTube seems to be a big one among these, but I'm sure they mentioned the article SoundCloud. They mentioned it elsewhere too. So, but yeah, it's only third-party apps. I mean, in fact, that you look at the screenshot here of iTunes Radio. I'm sure it looks like if you swiped away from the ad. The first offer you would get is Spotify, which you can download music in, and that is fine because you're downloading it from their own service, which is legal. Yeah.
I mean, if that's how it is, fine. I think I do think that developers of apps. I don't think SoundCloud's ignoring this. Like, for example, I don't think SoundCloud sees this and says, "Oh, that's no big deal. We should ignore that." I think they're aware of it because I think it impacts what they do. And I think even though it might not apply to them now, there is a slope there. Now, that said, if this applies, which it might, looking at these apps and looking at how they look and knowing how these apps usually function, if these are the types of apps that allow you to download, like I see one on here, Video Git for Facebook, I'm pretty sure that's just an app that allows you to download Facebook videos to your phone. I don't really like those things. I mean, obviously it violates the terms of service most likely and certainly copyright.
Yeah.
And so I don't like those stuff. The YouTube downloaders, I hate seeing that stuff in the Kindle Fire marketplace and in the Android marketplace. So yeah, I mean, those sorts of apps, I see it. I think that's good to get rid of them, and hopefully that's where it ends.
Yeah, it is. And as you pointed out, it's not just a copyright issue. It's also a terms of service issue. Most of these sites, SoundCloud, YouTube, Vimeo, LiveLeak, etc., they all have terms of service.
Because the way they're downloading is scraping.
To
make that clear for people. I mean, the way they're downloading is just scraping the content off the website. If you're not familiar with these apps, they just enter a URL and they'll just give you a MP4 file of the video from YouTube, where you would not be able to download from YouTube ordinarily. These apps make it possible, and it's not because YouTube or the creator of the video wants it that way. It's just, that's what the software does. It reads the flash file or the whatever video file is on the page at the time. Obviously, probably not an Apple device, it's a flash file, but whatever video file is there, and it downloads it.
Yeah, and it's worth noting for anyone who's a YouTube user, if you want to download your own MP4 files, you can do that from the video page in YouTube legally. You do not need to use one of these apps. Thank you, Patrick, for pointing that out to me many years ago, actually. You were the one that told me that trick.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. And I think some accounts, if not all, are limited to the number of downloads they can do per day. I think Sean told me a while back it was like 2 a day or something for him. I don't know, but I think some accounts might be limited. But you can still download them.
Yeah. It might be a bandwidth thing. You only download so many megs or something like
Right.
or something like that.
No, I understand it.
Just a
I mean,
guess.
of course,
I've
you
never hit
download
the
other
limit.
videos.
Well, you want to move on
Yeah.
to our last story this week? Well, Patrick, how would you like an extra $5 million?
By the time you're done talking about it, I'll have
Eventually.
already signed off. So good talking to you, Jonathan. I'm
Okay,
just
well,
kidding.
there you go. Good talking to you too, man. It's been
Delayed
great.
joke. Delayed joke. Sorry, what was your
Kim.com.
question?
Yeah, delay joke. No, but I was just going to say that Kim.com of Mega Upload fame is offering a $5 million bounty on anyone who blows the whistle on illegal action by the Department of Justice and the prosecution of him and his site Mega Upload. He believes that the MPA and the RAAA somehow, some way, interacted improperly with the Department of Justice to get the prosecution against him moving, and for any evidence of that is leaked to the media, he will pay $5 million once his assets are unfrozen.
Oh, okay, there you go. I was wondering about that part because we talk about his money not being there, and I was going to say, how's he going to pay this? Well, I guess if he's got $5 million, he's got it. But I guess you just mentioned a very important caveat.
Yeah, he once he gets his assets unfrozen, if they are unfrozen, he will pay $5 million to the whistleblower. My question is, how is he going to pay an anonymous whistleblower $5 million? It's the anonymous part that I don't get.
Yeah. Well,
that raises a pretty big question.
They'll have to be known to him.
Exactly, at the very least. But he's suggesting that people go to The Guardian and use their whistleblower tool to leak the information. If you do that, you would be completely anonymous. And I guess you'd have to find some way to prove to him personally that you were the whistleblower, but yeah, I'm not sure how that one really works. But basically speaking, he tells you go to the media, leak the information, and then if you do that, once the case is cleared up and his assets are unfrozen, you'll get $5 million. Easiest $5 million you can ever make in your life.
Yeah, I can't blame him, I guess.
I can't blame him for trying this, because this is kind of the way he is. He's that eccentric guy. He goes big or goes home on everything he does. He's got to be the #1 Call of Duty player. You know, he is that type of person. But he obviously seems convinced that something unethical happened here. But I mean, and if someone claims his money, I guess we'll find out. But I really don't see that connection. Just because the MPA and the RAAA complained, the Department of Justice took action. That doesn't necessarily mean anything illegal or immoral happened. If my house is robbed and I call the police, does the robber, when he gets arrested, get to complain that I had an improper relationship with the police? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I know you have an improper relationship with the RAAA, but I don't know about the MPA.
Oh.
But no, I'm just kidding. No, what I was going to say was, like I said, I can't blame him for trying. I get it. It's a publicity stunt. And also, you know, the government will be happy to talk to anyone who has something on him. So I guess the inverse is true, that if someone has something on the government, that might weaken their case, and I'm sure Kim.com will be happy to talk to them, and this might be his way of motivating them to do so if they exist, which, as you suggest, they may not exist. There may not be anything out there, but maybe this is a flashy way of getting somebody who may be a little disillusioned or maybe a little unhappy with their current role or whatever it is. You know, there's many different reasons people turn. It could be a conscience issue. Who knows? Like, I don't know if everyone's hands are clean here necessarily, but this might just be a way of someone motivating someone else to come forward, and maybe there will be no one at all, but he gets some press in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really, I think, been kind of the crux of what Kim.com has done, is that he has fought his case far more in the court of public opinion and in the public relations department than he has in the courts. I mean, in the courts, he's had some positive results, but it's been, you know, mixed for him at best. But he's really fought the publicity battle here, and that's, I think, is just another.
Yeah.
It's just another move on that front.
It's a public case, you know. It's hard to seize a mansion and, you know, without having it be public. So I guess, I don't know, what the government has some PR to do. I mean, it was funny. We're done with the story pretty much, but I'll tell you a funny story. So there's a bridge out here in the Outer Banks, and the way you get over, so there's, you know, there's the Outer Banks, the area where the beach is, and then there's the mainland where I live. It's just across the bridge. So there's this bridge called the Wright Memorial Bridge, and there's two sides, two-lane bridges, one going that way, one going this way. So last year they closed one side and they closed it for, I want to say, 9 months. Okay, so it was one lane on one side of the bridge. going back and forth.
Yeah.
So it wasn't great. It was an inconvenience, let's say. And the reason that they said they closed it, the reason they told people publicly, is to fix bumps on the bridge. Now, that's a stupid thing to say, and I'll tell you why. Because locals don't want to be inconvenienced for 9 months because of bumps on a bridge. People are used to bumps on a bridge. Bumps happen on bridges. It's not like we're bouncing up and down. I mean, it's like little raises on a bridge. Bridges aren't always flat and smooth. But what they should have said is they should have said, we're going to fix the bridge. We're doing bridge maintenance. It's going to help us get 20 more years out of the bridge, which I guess might be true. But that wasn't what people talked about. That wasn't what people were led with. And so it's kind of a PR thing. I don't know if it's really worth what they're doing on the bridge or not, but just the way they sold it was like, so we're going to have traffic for 9 months because of some bumps. Great, awesome. Let's all sign up, and here's another $5 million for the bridge.
Yeah, and that's kind of, what happened. They had, a similar PR disaster here locally. Our zoo, our aquarium, and our insectarium are run by the Audubon Society here in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of zoos, they're a combination of government funds, public funds, private funds, etc. It's a hodgepodge. Well, they wanted to increase a tax to help support the zoo and and they had specific things they wanted to do and to build with it. But they never told anyone what those things were. It says, yeah, we need more money. Yeah, how far do you think that referendum went when it came time to vote? Not very.
I didn't get.
I mean, everyone loves Audubon, but no, it did not. It was shot down about 78% to 22%. It was beaten pretty roundly.
Right.
But
I mean,
so yeah, everyone loves Audubon.
It's like blind faith. You got 22% who are like blind faith in Audubon, and a certain number of people who want to see the budget.
Well, I think 22% were the actual members of Audubon Society leaflets that actually explained what it was going to, and 78% was the rest of the public that showed up to vote. Or some people might have said, Audubon, I like those guys, I'll give them money, and I said blind faith.
Yeah, I like birds.
I like birds, yeah. Oh, you actually know who Audubon was? That's actually rare. Someone who knows who Audubon is about.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, actually it is. I know people here in New Orleans where the Audubon name is everywhere that don't know what Audubon did.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. I've always heard the Audubon Society and birdwatching.
Yeah. Yeah.
But look at me. I'm cultured.
I mean, Audubon, of course, was famous for his drawings of birds and cataloging and identifying species.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so yeah, now we got the Audubon Society, which is more of a conservatory thing, and then also run a lot of, and apparently do things elsewhere too. But here in New Orleans, they run the zoo, the big aquarium, and the insectarium, as long as a few other things too. So yeah, but yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. A lot of people don't know that, Patrick. You would be very surprised how rare you are.
I need to come to New Orleans then and be like, oh, yeah, Audubon. Oh, yeah, I knew him when he was a bird guy.
I totally know what Audubon's about. Yeah. Well, Patrick, I am indeed all out of copyright news. You got anything else to add or any final
And I'm
thoughts?
Patrick O'Keefe of the iFroggy Network. I'm just kidding. Delayed joke. Sorry. No, I don't have anything else. I think we're good here.
All right. Well, on that note, everyone, my name is Jonathan Bailey. I am from the website Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and pretty much everywhere else other than TweetDeck right now. Username Plagiarism Today, though TweetDeck is Twitter. But don't use your TweetDeck to see my Twitter right now. Yeah, that's better.
All right. And I'm Patrick O'Keefe of the iFroggy Network. Blog at advantagingcommunities.com and patrickokeefe.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn as Patrick O'Keefe.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on this lag-filled episode of the Copyright 2.0 show, and we will see you guys very, very soon. Talk to you later.